For decades, the same three words have been quietly stamped onto the underside of almost everything you own. Your phone, your shoes, your kitchen appliances. Made in China. To Western consumers, and especially to Western politicians, those words tell a frighteningly simple story. A story of a manufacturing superpower that swallowed the world's factories. A story of cheap labor, endless assembly lines, and wealth flowing relentlessly from west to east. Feels like dominance. But that story is outdated. More than that, it's misleading. If you want to understand how the global economy truly works today, and China's increasingly unstable position inside it, you have to look beyond the label. You have to look inside the box. So let's do exactly that, by opening the most iconic product of the modern era. The Apple iPhone. When you buy an iPhone, the box doesn't say Made in China. It says Assembled in China. Yet for years, global trade statistics treated the full price of that phone, say $500, as a Chinese export to the United States. That accounting illusion inflated trade deficits by billions, fueled political outrage, and helped spark trade wars. But the reality was far more revealing. When economists traced where the money actually went, they found something shocking. In 2009, out of every iPhone shipped from China, less than $1.30 of value stayed in China. Not $130, $1.30. The screen came from Japan, the memory chips from South Korea, motion sensors from Germany, and nearly 60% of the profit flowed straight back to California, paying for design, software, branding, and intellectual property. China wasn't the factory of the world. It was the final assembly station. This is the global value chain. And for 3 decades, China's role wasn't dominance, it was endurance. Low wages, long hours, environmental damage, all accepted for that $1.30 because there was no alternative. It was the price of entry into globalization. But here's where everything changes. China no longer accepts $1.30. Over the last decade, it has quietly fought its way up the value chain. It no longer just tightens screws. It builds the batteries. It manufactures the screens. It writes the software. By 2018, China's captured value per iPhone had jumped from $1.30 to over $10.40, an 800% increase. And that's for foreign brands. For domestic phones like Huawei or Xiaomi, China captures nearly the entire value chain. So Made in China is the wrong label. The truth is made in the world, but the center of gravity is shifting fast. China is moving from the workshop to the laboratory, and that transition is the most disruptive economic force of our lifetime. It explains why trade wars failed, why decoupling hurts, and why the next era of globalization will look nothing like the last. Backhand index pointing right. Quick pause. If this perspective is already changing how you see global trade, subscribe now because part 2 goes even deeper. Now we reach the second misunderstanding, what this shift means for the American worker. The China shock narrative is familiar. China joined the WTO in 2001, flooded markets with cheap goods, and hollowed out U.S. manufacturing. And yes, between 1999 and 2011, roughly 2.4 million American jobs disappeared, especially in the Rust Belt. The damage was real. But that's only half the ledger. While low-end factory jobs vanished, trade with China simultaneously created millions of jobs elsewhere. American farmers exported soybeans. Energy firms sold gas. Semiconductor companies sold chips. By 2015, U.S. exports to China supported over 1.2 million American jobs directly. Add in lower costs for steel, electronics, logistics, design, and tech, and trade with China was a net job creator. The failure wasn't trade. It was distribution. The gains went to shareholders in tech hubs. The losses hit factory towns. That was a domestic policy failure, not a foreign conspiracy. Now the shock is reversing. As wages rise, China's low-cost jobs are leaving, for Vietnam, India, Mexico. But unlike the U.S., China is obsessed with what comes next. Which brings us to the most misunderstood reality of all. Despite headlines claiming companies are fleeing China, foreign investment keeps rising. Tesla built its most efficient factory in Shanghai. Apple deepened supplier ties. BASF committed billions. Why? Because China is no longer just a factory. It's a fitness center. The competition is brutal. Consumers are demanding. Innovation moves at terrifying speed. If you can survive in China, you can dominate globally. Tesla uses China to iterate faster. Starbucks reinvented itself there and exported those lessons back home. Leave China and you don't just lose a market. You lose access to the world's most aggressive innovation ecosystem. But membership has a cost. The deal is no longer market for technology. It's data for speed. Many fail. Uber failed. Amazon failed. Those who adapt survive. And now comes the final shift. China no longer competes with Vietnam. It competes with Germany and Japan. It builds its own high-precision machines. Exports EVs globally. Controls battery supply chains. The cheap factory era is over. This is the real tension today, not steel, but control over the commanding heights of the global economy. Supply chains can't be rebuilt overnight. They're living ecosystems. And China's is deep, sticky, and resilient. So where does that leave us? Made in China was never the truth. China isn't a factory. It's a network. A fitness center. A rising competitor that now designs the factory itself. The iPhone in your pocket proves it. The era of $1.30 is over. The era of $10, $40 and beyond has begun. Now comes the part that most people in the West misunderstand, and the part that makes this entire story uncomfortable. If you follow Western headlines, you'd think foreign companies are running away from China as fast as possible. You hear about political crackdowns, corporate raids, regulatory uncertainty. The narrative is simple. China is becoming uninvestable. But the data tells a very different story. In 2020, during a global pandemic and in the middle of a trade war, foreign direct investment into China hit record highs. Tesla didn't leave. Tesla built one of its largest and most advanced factories in Shanghai. BASF committed over $10 billion to a massive chemical complex. Apple didn't pull out. It doubled down on Chinese suppliers. So the obvious question is, why? Why would the smartest companies on Earth increase their exposure to a country supposedly becoming hostile to business? The answer is what I call the fitness center effect. China is no longer just a place where things are made cheaply. And it's no longer just a massive consumer market. Today, China is a training ground. A brutal, high-intensity environment where global champions are forged. Competition in China is ruthless. Consumers are demanding. Innovation cycles are short and unforgiving. If your product survives China, it can survive anywhere. Look at the auto industry. For years, Western car makers had an easy ride. Joint ventures. Outdated models sold at premium prices. Guaranteed profits. That era is over. Today, they're fighting a swarm of aggressive Chinese EV companies. BYD, NIO, XPeng. Releasing new models every few months, packed with software that makes Western vehicles feel outdated. This wasn't an accident. China allowed Tesla to build the first wholly foreign-owned car factory, specifically to scare domestic companies into innovating faster. It worked. But it also turned China into Tesla's most efficient production hub anywhere on Earth. Tesla doesn't just manufacture in China, it gets better in China. Same story with Starbucks. In the U.S., it's a coffee shop. In China, facing competitors with app-based ordering and 15-minute delivery, Starbucks was forced to become a logistics and tech company. Those lessons didn't stay in China, they were exported back to the West. This is the new supply chain reality. It's no longer just about moving goods. It's about moving ideas. Companies that leave China aren't just losing factories. They're losing access to the world's fastest innovation loop. And that has consequences. Isolation doesn't make companies safer. It makes them slower. But the gym isn't free. The old deal was market access in exchange for technology. That deal is gone. The new bargain is data for speed. Follow the rules, share data, adapt fast, or fall behind. Many companies fail here. Uber failed. Amazon failed. They couldn't adapt to local behavior, local expectations, local competition. Those that stay, Apple, Tesla, Siemens, stay because leaving would mean disconnecting from the future of their own industries. And now we reach the final shift. For 40 years, made in China meant cheap. It competed with Vietnam and Bangladesh. It did not compete with Germany or Japan. That line has been crossed. China now builds the machines themselves. High-precision tools. heavy industrial equipment, advanced batteries. It exports electric vehicles at scale. It surpassed Japan as the world's largest auto exporter. Not with knockoffs, but with high-tech products powered by Chinese software and Chinese supply chains. This is why tensions are rising. It's no longer about low-cost steel. It's about who controls the high ground of the global economy. The U.S. and Europe are responding with subsidies, tariffs, and industrial policy, but supply chains aren't Lego blocks. You can't dismantle them overnight and rebuild them somewhere else. They're ecosystems. Dense, rooted, built on trust, logistics, and decades of coordination. Even when companies move assembly to Vietnam or India, the components still come from China. Made in Vietnam often hides a made in China backbone. So here's the truth. China isn't just a factory. It's a network, a fitness center, and a competitor that climbed from the bottom of the value chain to the very top. The world can't simply walk away. We're too intertwined. The phone in your pocket proves it. Designed in California, powered by chips from Taiwan, assembled in China, sold globally. True decoupling wouldn't be strategic. It would be the most expensive inflationary disruption in modern history. The real question isn't whether the West should trade with China. It's how to compete with a China that no longer tightens screws, but designs the factory itself. The era of $1.30 is over. The era of $10, $40 and beyond has begun. Speech balloon. So let me ask you, can the global economy function without China? Or are we already too deep to turn back? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you want more breakdowns like this, subscribe now. This channel exists to challenge the stories everyone thinks they already understand.